Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Jonathan Safran Foer is one of the greatest novelists we have, but his most important work may not be a fictional story. It may be what he's done to expose the world to what it means to eat meat. His 2009 book, Eating Animals, was a shattering dissection of the meat industry from the author's personal point of view. Now in 2018, Foer and director Christopher Dillon Quinn, along with actress and activist Natalie Portman, have documented not just what it means to put meat in our body, but what meat means to our entire way of life. Let's take a look at the trailer for Eating Animals.
You come across these steel masterpieces, all brought together in the most ingenious ways to produce more and more.
Is this farming? I say no.
This is breeding 50 years ago. I spent days and months taking care of those birds in the pasture.
The basics that I'm using today is passed from one generation to the next. It's a way of life rather than going to a factory producing protein units.
There's no way you can love an animal that has been genetically engineered to die in 6 weeks.
There's inherent cruelty in that system. I started documenting things I saw or things I heard about. It was time to pull the trigger.
It's against federal law to have cameras?
You can't shut down the individual's right to know about what this industry is doing. There's got to be a stop. There's no future in this method of raising food. I believe you're going to see more traditional type livestock production.
The demand is there.
I think we're going to see massive shift over to the plant-based technologies. It's healthier and environmentally sustainable.
If we're going to change the system, there needs to be a place for farmers to come and relearn this again. This is my mission, fighting to keep something alive.
Everybody, please welcome Jonathan Safran Foer and director Christopher Dillon Quinn. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Why don't we start with the conversation we were just having during the trailer that we were just watching, which is a big fear that I have about life right now, which is that we can expose people to everything bad about how they live and everything that they're doing to hurt the environment and animals and maybe even themselves, and people will still just go, potentially, yeah, I know, but that's how I live. How do you live with that? And how do you live with that when you're trying to expose people to the things that they're doing?
It's just incredibly difficult. I mean, I find it difficult in my own life when I make my own choices, and I find it difficult in conversations with others. I think there's a difference between knowing something in an intellectual way and knowing it in your heart. There's like a distance between being informed and being activated or inspired, and it's very, very tricky to be activated. I think about it all the time with regards to the environment, which is absolutely central to this subject. We are used to making this distinction between climate change deniers and people who believe the science of climate change. But in fact, in terms of the ways that we behave, we're virtually identical.
Yeah, both are doing living the exact same way.
And so our grandchildren will look back, and I'm not sure they will make any distinction between one kind of denial, the denial of intellect, and the denial of practice.
One way you look at it, you could say climate change deniers are more honest with themselves.
At least they have a reason for not doing, or they have a reason for being inactive. So I think one of the first steps is the acknowledgement that it's hard. Just what you were saying. I think we sometimes think about like life changes, especially in terms of habits, as you either do it or you don't do it, like a binary on and off, as opposed to a constant struggle over the course of a lifetime. I think people feel that struggle with things like honesty. It's very hard to be honest. And we try to tell the truth, and sometimes we tell white lies, and sometimes for very good reasons. But it's not as if once we tell a lie, we suddenly become lying people who lie all the time. Instead, we look at life as this series of choices and a series of efforts. And for me, I wrote a book about meat eating, spent years researching it, spent years talking about it, and I still find it to be a struggle. Like it's not like I resolved it once in my life and never looked back. I still think meat smells good, looks good. There are many social occasions, especially if I'm being hosted by somebody, when I want to eat it. It just feels like the right thing to do. And so I have to then engage with the struggle instead of just saying, well, I'm always this or I'm always that. And in a way, taking the pressure off of identities and off of I'm this or that, and instead kind of forgiving yourself and saying, I'm a human being. It's difficult to be a human being. Human beings are inconsistent. I'm going to do my best. Sometimes I'll fail, but when I fail, I'm not going to just give up. I'll try again. I'll go back into the struggle.
I would also say there is a power that comes with engaging with that struggle on such a primal level when it comes to eating, whether or not you're going to eat meat, whether you're being engaged socially, or I was talking to you before about going into a grocery store and thinking just a little bit harder about what you're buying and how you're going to eat. Once you get a little used to it, there is a personal power and control that comes from engaging with yourself on that very primal level, I have found. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what your example of going to the supermarket and taking pause right before you pile food into your cart. And I think that's the idea. It takes a while to get there. It's not an easy roadmap. It's, as Jonathan was saying, it's not binary. We can't just like switch it off. And so it is that moment where you really have to start thinking about what's important. And so if you do take a pause when you're deciding what sandwich you want to eat and you opt out of having a turkey sandwich, there's something that's really valuable in that moment that's kind of, in a way, in this day and age, kind of self-empowering. At least you aren't supporting a system that's leading us down to a road of environmental degradation, and then also, animals are suffering. I think we were, 50 billion animals. And so then you can take pause and just look at it in a different way. But it takes a long time. I mean, I hope the film at least gives you the language to consider it anyway. And it really is providing some evidence for you to kind of take a look at that and have a conversation.
I think the word consider is so important in regards to a movie like this. It's giving you a moment to consider something. It's giving you evidence to consider something. And hopefully, at least that moment where you consider, you are just being a little bit more thoughtful about what you're putting in your body and where this food is coming from. Let's backtrack a little bit and talk about when you decided to make a documentary based off of the book. The book is a very personal exploration. There's lots of research, but it's also a very personal exploration of eating meat. There's, you talk about having a child, and at that moment, sort of that's when you started thinking about really why you eat meat and where it came from. And that's not necessarily a part of the movie. When did you decide that the movie wasn't going to be as much of the sort of personal exploration that his book was?
Well, I think because the book was so compelling, it really kind of bookends Jonathan's, starts with the book that's very personal and ends on a very personal note. And, the book is a process. Jonathan going and looking under the hood of where his food was going to come, was an expectant, child, and what he was going to feed it. And that story was really compelling. But I felt when we got together and started talking about it, I don't think we thought it was wise not to go down that road again, since it's already been done with the book. And in a way, Natalie kind of narrates that, at least tonally, that idea that it's a very personal decision of making choices of whether you eat meat, dairy, eggs. And
she does have sort of moment passages like within the film that are sort of, yeah.
And that was representing a little bit of Jonathan's personal story in the book, although completely different. But it was. But in that process, every time Natalie's voice comes up, it's kind of a personal moment. It's more of a subjective look at eating animals and having a beat where you can actually say something that is like less subjective and more personal. And that's the decision we made to kind of carry that through from book to film.
I think one of the most startling elements of the documentary is how difficult it is to document the industry, how difficult they make it. And we see that states have adopted laws at this point to make it difficult. And people who try to document it are then considered environmental terrorists, essentially, by our government. That in and of itself should lead people to believe, I think, okay, something's wrong here, that we're not allowed to at least look. They don't want us and won't let us look under the hood. Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you ever had the experience of a friend or partner's cell phone is on the table, and you're like, "Can I just look at this real quick? I just want to check the weather or something." And they're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 maybe don't look at my phone." You think why are you? What are you? It immediately. I mean, there isn't even any room for interpretation. You just know there's something there you're not supposed to see. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they wouldn't care. If you wanted to know where any other food that you eat comes from, go to the bagel store. Say, "I'm very curious about this bagel I just bought that I'm going to put into my body. Could you show me how it's made?" They'd say, "Sure, come on." They might find it a slightly odd request, but they would show it to you. Any food you eat, usually people are proud of what they make. You have a live audience here. It's because there's nothing to hide, and in fact, it contributes to the feeling of kind of authenticity of what it is that you're producing. There's nothing authentic about meat in America now. So one of the problems is trying to interrupt the mental image that we have of farmers. When most people are asked, what do you envision when you think of a farmer, they'll say somebody wearing overalls, a pitchfork, shovel, there's fences around meadows.
Norman Rockwell painting is what you're describing.
Yeah, animals outside, very basic things like sunshine, rain, breeze. And farming in America just does not conform to that at all anymore. 99% of the animals that we eat come from factory farms. They're typically animals raised that are inside. They are animals that were bred to grow enormously in very short periods of time, eating as little food as possible. Animals that have to be fed antibiotics just to stay alive. The lighting is regulated inside the farm so that animals believe day and night is happening at cycles that are more quick than a 24-hour cycle, as happens in nature. So what the farm industry wants is for us to continue to imagine farmers as we do, because what we're imagining is a good thing. That is a noble profession. These are people who work hard, who do not want to destroy the environment, who do not want to be cruel to animals, who do want to produce healthy food for people to eat. But that's not the reality. The reality is that the system is absolutely dominated by something that is cruel, violent, and destructive. And they know it, so they try to keep it from us. They know that the more we talk about it, and the more we think about it, and when I say we, I don't mean people in New York City or college students in Berkeley. I mean everybody. Whatever your age, race, political affiliation, the more we humans know about factory farming, the less we will want to support it.
Do you think that it's also their intention to process it so much to the point where we don't even know or feel that it's meat anymore, or think about it as meat, or the farmer? We don't think about the next step after what we're putting in our body?
Well, I think they spend a great deal of money divorcing us from where our food comes from.
Exactly, divorcing us, yeah.
Yeah, and that's intentional, but we also have to kind of own up a little bit of that too. Just as you were saying, going into the supermarket, making a decision of what you put in your cart. All the information's out there, and this, started, factory farming started, 40 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. It's not that old. And we got there, one step at a time, and accelerated into a place where I think anybody would find it questionable as a good practice. But now we're in the information age. So if anybody really wants to know where their food comes from, it's pretty easy to find out. So I think we have to kind of take it on the chin a little bit to, see where our food's coming from. And I think most people would find the factory farm system just objectionable. It's a really difficult thing to see. In the film Eating Animals, I think we'd like to take you through that. There's some difficult moments, but it's undeniable that it exists, and it's really a matter of going from saying I don't want to know to wanting to know, and I think that's kind of the way forward.
One thing that I really liked about the film is that there's a certain amount of layers when it comes to factory farming, and it's this layer of like, okay, say you don't care how the animals are treated. What about how humans are treated? And look at what's going on with these farmers, right? They're essentially existing in a sort of corporate serfdom at this point, where they live in debt to the corporations and can barely break even, maybe never break even, and are just passing on debt to their children because of the way that factory farming is created. I thought that was such a smart angle to approach it by as well. And it's almost an angle that's like, just in case you don't care that much about this element, there is this other element that is also awful and kind of evil. When did you discover that upon making the film and talking to your subjects?
I mean, it came from the first scout, and then also starting to film, and then I realized it's not just a depletion of resources, of environment, of our water, everything. There was something. There's a depletion of spirit. I think most of the people who are in the rural communities, I mean, America's made up of a patchquilt of independent farms, and that's what we like to idolize ourselves, when the mythos of America, that's what we talk about. And now it's down to a handful of, controlling interests. And most of the people, like you mentioned, we meet Craig Watts, who's a contract farmer, raises chicken, but he just mounts more and more debt. And it's, as he says, a treadmill of debt. And they like it that way. So the farmer always has to show up the next year to raise the animals, because the debt is so significant for his family that he has no choice but try and make good for the next year.
Yeah. And he has essentially no time and no ability to sort of look into what he's doing or think about what he's doing or the greater good or greater worse of what he's doing, because he's so far in debt.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the farmers I met, you're talking about, not small amounts of money, but you're talking about like, $500,000, $600,000 in debt. And they intentionally, the system makes them update their barns. And so they come and you say you have to get these new ventilation fans. So here's you have to put another $100,000 into your barn. And it just starts to, that's Craig Watts said, everybody has their breaking point. I had mine 20 years into the system. And that's why he opened his doors and decided to expose what factory farming really is.
And I think by showcasing these whistleblowers and also having a line in the film that I think is from the book as well, and excuse me for paraphrasing and butchering whatever the line was, but that farmers to a degree are the backbone of democracy, and at this point they feel, and this isn't the line, but they feel completely disconnected from the system, and I think that has a resonance across the country that doesn't just have to do with farming. And when the movie taps into something that I think is so important, which is that it's not just about being a vegetarian and eating animals. This reverberates in so many different kinds of ways that we live, and the divorce that we have from so many different elements of our society, and the way that capitalism in a lot of ways has divorced us from the means of production in so many different elements of how we live. I thought that was so important that you kept that line in there about the backbone of democracy. That is in there, right? I didn't just make that up. Yeah. Thank you.
More or less.
The writer's pissed.
The writer never gets pissed. I think the point you're making is good, or maybe it was the point you made, or maybe it was the point I made.
I think you guys made it.
But there's a kind of complement to that point, which is not only does it feel bad to be divorced from these fundamental aspects of our lives, whether it is like my having absolutely no idea how my cell phone works, and I'm utterly dependent on it.
There's a precious metal that was dug up in some, impoverished country that, to make that phone. Yeah.
We become increasingly alienated and from our surroundings, and give over more and more control, right? I don't know how my phone works, but Apple knows how my phone works. And because of that, they sort of implicitly and explicitly, there's a power dynamic, and I'm powerless and they are powerful. The complement to that is it feels amazingly good to retake power and to say, this is not what I want. I am not, the power dynamic works in the other direction, right? I had many, many farmers say to me, I don't grow what I want to grow, I grow what people want me to grow. Right? Just as we have the power to elect a new government, although that's a tricky proposition, we have the power to choose differently when we're in a supermarket or when we're in a restaurant to say, hey, this industry that is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than everything else in the world put together, this industry in which animal cruelty is not an unfortunate exception, but is the business model, this industry that is, according to the United Nations, one of the top 2 or 3 causes of every significant environmental problem on the planet, locally and globally, water pollution, air pollution, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, I can destroy it. We can destroy it. And not by going to war, not by spending billions of dollars, but just by saying no. And by the way, the saying no doesn't have to be, hey, I woke up this morning and I'm a vegan for the rest of my life. The saying no can be much more subtle. Like, I'm going to take a step in this direction that I believe in. So I'm going out to dinner tonight with a friend. We're going to this great restaurant. I'm going to eat meat. But I do have lunch in between now and then. And ordinarily, I might just go to this place on the corner and get this sandwich that I don't even really like. This dumb, turkey sandwich, which doesn't even taste good. But I've been thinking about it, and I don't want to support the industry twice today. I'll support it once today. If we could find ways, instead of fearing the hypocrisy of being sort of ethically incomplete, being impure, if instead we could get excited about taking steps in this good direction against something that we really all agree is antithetical to our values, then we could change the planet.
Taking the power back, as Rage Against the Machine says.
And as has been said even before them, believe it or not. Yeah.
Jonathan, I'm curious. You're an incredible novelist, and when it comes to writers and writers of great talent, it's very hard to pull them away from what they're dedicated to, which is their craft. And I think of the recent thing about Philip Roth in The New Yorker, and how at a certain point of his life he just gave up everything and decided to write only, and was at his desk 10 hours a day basically, wouldn't really talk to anybody, wouldn't read other books, because he was so dedicated to his craft. What was it about meat and animals that made you decide and made you comfortable with putting aside your creative novelist ambitions for a little while? Because you did put it aside for a number of years while you worked on this, and I can't imagine that was an easy decision.
It was actually an incredibly easy decision.
Really?
Both because
I am out of ideas. Thank God I don't have to do this for a little while.
I will do anything to get away from novel writing, to be honest. I just find it. I have a friend of mine who unfortunately passed away, who's a writer, who once said, writing is like pulling teeth out of your penis. It's just the most unpleasant
Which I've done. No, sorry.
It's extraordinarily unpleasant a lot of the time. That having been said, I was drawn to this project not to get away from novels, but because this was something I believed in. And I'm a writer, but my goal in life is not to write novels. My goal, as is probably everybody's in this room, is to feel like myself over time, which sounds like a simple thing, but it's an incredibly difficult thing, both because there's so many forces that keep you from being yourself, and because the self is a changing thing. And it takes a lot of investigations, which are oftentimes quite difficult, to figure out who you are and what you believe in, what you're afraid of, and what you hope for. And this is a subject that I had cared about for a very long time. And I didn't feel like myself, because I was making decisions about this thing that's quite important based on really uninformed instincts. I kind of thought it wasn't quite right, so maybe I would be a vegetarian, but sometimes on, sometimes off. And I didn't feel like myself. And my goal was not to write a book. My goal was to figure out what it was that I thought, which required figuring out how the world works. And the result was this book. And I have to say, one of the great things for me about not eating meat is it does allow me to feel more like myself.
I don't want to say take the power back again, but gaining some sort of personal power once again over the decisions that you make, right?
Yeah, and not only power against an industry, but power that's in opposition to a kind of willful ignorance or willful blindness. We all know what it's like to encounter a subject and think, I know that's not good, but I don't want to think about it right now, or I don't have the time to think about it right now, or I don't want to risk recognizing or acknowledging my own hypocrisy. And you can kind of do that. And you can do that actually for a whole life, but you won't be yourself doing it for a whole life. You'll be a diminished version of yourself.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question right here?
Hi. So I have, I guess, kind of a two-part question. My first is that when it comes to eating in a way that is more friendly or more sustainable or organic, it seems that with that comes a higher cost of eating. And so I'm curious about what solutions there are then to eating in a healthier, in a better way, without doing too much damage to your pocketbook, while also, not causing the collapse of an industry that does employ a lot of people. Like, I mean, if we continue to eat less and less meat, then that is a large portion of people in this country who are then going to be out of work. And I'm curious about what solutions you guys have in mind to that.
Well, I mean, I think we're faced with the fact that meat should cost more. So you look at a 99-cent hamburger that you can pick up around the corner at a fast food restaurant, and it's cheap, you can grab it and you can go. But when you externalize those costs, and when you add the subsidies that we pay through our taxpayer dollars, the taxes that we pay, and then also from the healthcare costs that are running rampant right now, all of a sudden that burger, I think you were doing some research with it, and so there's a guy that's trying to find the calculus for this, but that burger all of a sudden becomes just south of $100 when you actually add up all the costs. So really when it comes down to it is you're buying something that's very inexpensive, but it's artificially supported through subsidies, and it ultimately doesn't make sense in the long run. And that's the thing about factory farming, I really think, is that it's, as you said in the book, it's ultimately doomed to fail because it's artificially supported. So really when it comes down to eating less meat when you go through your day, and if you want to, opt out for breakfast and or lunch and not eat meat, it's a really significant way of changing the system. But it's also, I think there are ways that you can find cost-effective ways of not eating meat. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're having this conversation that meat is the cheapest thing that we're talking about. It's really like, it's now cheaper than vegetables. And that's like something really significant, and you bring up a good point to that. And that's something that really we should try and change, I think. And then I don't know if you want to point out to the second part of the question, but yeah.
Of what, farmers?
Yeah, in terms of, if this has an economic effect on the beef industry, on the meat industry, then what, I guess, is the solution to helping those who would be out of work because of this?
Well, the whole nature of factory farming is to take the humans out of it as much as possible. So as I was saying before, when we imagine a farm, one of the first things you would imagine is a farmer on the farm. And now farms are almost entirely automated and require virtually no human presence. So it's really not good in terms of human economy. Also, as we eat different things, farmers will grow different things. It's not as if the choice is to have farmers or not have farmers. The choice is whether to have farmers who are raising tens or hundreds of thousands of chickens in windowless sheds, or to have farmers who are producing other kinds of foods which are healthier for us, healthier for the environment, and for which they can make a better living.
And that happens in the film where you see Craig Watts, who closes down his contract, chicken business, running 6 barns, and is now investigating growing legumes for plant-based alternatives. So that's a perfect example of the change that's happening.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of those fallacies that we believe based off of the propaganda of the industry that if we were to change the way that we live, we would put so many people out of work, when those corporations who are putting forward this message would much faster than our change in diet put those people out of work through automation if they could, and are doing, right?
It's also a little bit disingenuous. It's like saying, if we stop painting our houses with lead paint, what's going to happen to all of the people who make lead paint? They will make something else, something that doesn't hurt us, right, and that doesn't hurt the world. So
But what's going to happen to all those people who love lead, Jonathan?
I'm one of them, as is maybe obvious from the way that I talk. But I'll eat vegetables instead, I guess.
Yes, stop eating lead paint chips instead of meat. I think we have time for one more question.
How you doing? I'm Devanio. This is really interesting to me because I kind of want to cut down meat myself. I feel like the way it's produced is not really too good. I've heard there's a lot of like steroids and stuff put into meat. But for me, it's like, obviously I'm trying to train. What else can I kind of eat that's got a lot of protein so I can kind of cut down on the meat? Another thing is like organic meat's a bit more expensive and they say it's more natural, like produced, and also halal meat. So I kind of wanted to get a more of an understanding. Is it produced a lot more natural than like the meat that's in the supermarkets?
Beets are really great for protein. Sorry. And and also protein is very overrated. There's a great book called Proteinaholic that you should check out. And protein is very, very much overrated. And it's a part of the meat industry's kind of propaganda that's put out that we need the amount of protein that we think that we need.
Okay.
Sorry.
And protein's found in a bunch of things. Like if you look at the sweet pea, there's a ton of protein in it. So if you eat it, and in a lot of greens, you can actually catch protein. But you're absolutely right. We have gotten into our minds that we have to consume this high percentage of protein, which is just not true.
And also not that great for our bodies as well. We're learning more and more that it's not incredibly healthy for our livers to consume the amount of protein we've been told for some time that we should be consuming.
At the end of the day, it's your body, right? And there's a lot of information in the world, but there's no information about what it feels like to be you. And I know people who say, like, look, I want to be a vegetarian, but I can't get full unless I eat meat once a day. Or people who say, I know that there's no scientific basis for this experience, but my experience is that I don't have as much energy if I don't eat meat. So I wouldn't be so presumptuous to tell you what works for you, but it may be, as you were saying earlier, like some of the responsibility is ours, to say, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with it for whatever reasons. Again, I can't tell you why you would or would not be comfortable with something. For some people, it's the environment. For some people, it's the animals. For some people, it's steroids or antibiotics. Just experiment. Like, see how you feel if you eat it only at dinner and not at lunch or breakfast. See how you feel if you have beans instead of beef. See how you feel if you have chicken instead of beef. Depending on what you care about, there might be a lot of reasons to eat. If you care about the environment, beef is far, far and away the worst meat to eat, the most destructive. If you care about animal welfare, then it's much better to eat beef than chickens because in one cow, there's the equivalent of, I think, something like 250 chickens worth of meat. And so that's like 250 individuals compared to one. And cows are generally given like a better life than chickens. So you should just go inside yourself and say, it's a great thing to do. Forget about what conclusion you reach. Just as a person in the world, it's great to sit down and say, like, what do I care about? Yes. And how does it correspond to the choices that I make?
For me, it's like, I feel like meat is really heavy when I eat it. And I do want to kind of cut it out and see how my body feels. Because I've met a few people that have kind of cut it out and they've said that they feel a lot better, like within themselves. Even like they don't get sick as much. So I don't know, I do want to try it and I do want to like cut it out as much. And I would like to watch your film. So if I can get the information on that, that would be good.
Great closer.
Sometimes, just one last thing. Sometimes people get in problems when they say, I'm going to try it. And what they mean is, I'm just going to like give up meat tomorrow, see how I feel in 2 weeks. If I feel better, I'll stick with it. If I don't feel better, I'll give it up. Forgetting that there's this like massive range of choices in between this all or nothing experiment. Like, you can try giving it up a little bit. You can try eating only fish. You can try it. I think if we could look at it more as like a process that might and will take the rest of your life, rather than a decision that's made once and either works or doesn't, it takes a lot of pressure off, and people don't have to feel so guilty or feel like a failure or feel like a hypocrite or get angry when it doesn't work, but instead say, okay, that wasn't exactly right for me. I'm going to try to do it this other way instead, and eventually, you find something that will feel good.
I mean, I think just to add to what you were saying is, I remember Natalie when we all got together, and she said, since I stopped eating, dairy and cheese, she went vegan. She said, funnily enough, I feel a lot more energy, and I never knew what that meant. And here I am 5 years down the road, and now I really understand. So your friends who said they have a lot more energy, I feel like I have a lot more energy not eating meat, which might be different for somebody else. But for me, it really, I wake up in a different way. Not eating meat, my system seems less challenged, and I'm not sick that much. So it's interesting, and that was a whole process of getting through. When I met Jonathan and Natalie when we first started to work on this film together, I was like, you got the wrong guy. I'm a pretty hearty meat eater, and they thought that was a good thing. And in this process, I've learned a lot. And this is all like to say that the film doesn't really kind of wag a finger saying you have to go this way or that, but it offers you the evidence, and you can hopefully draw your own conclusion.
It puts forward the process of thinking for yourself, and not necessarily saying you need to go vegan or vegetarian, but just think a little bit about this process and think about it for yourself, as you've said a number of times. And I think one thing that you said that is so important is when people say, I don't feel full, we've grown accustomed to what the idea of feeling full is a necessity rather than feeling nourished being the necessity. I have to wrap. I'm sorry, I'm ranting now. I love the documentary. I love the book from which it was based, and I love all of your work. Thank you so much for being here. How can people see Eating Animals?
Well, it comes out on Friday, June 15th in New York, and then June 22nd in Los Angeles, and then it rolls out to a number of other cities. So we're in quite a few places. You can go to the website, which is eatinganimalsmovie.com, and there's a list of places where it plays. Or you can just type in your zip code, and it will tell you the closest place.
Fantastic. Congratulations on the important work. Give them a round of applause, everybody. Thanks, guys.